Now that we have the oil pump mounted, we're going to move on to some other things on the project bike and come back to the oil pump adjustment later. I can't adjust the oil pump cable at this point until I get the throttle grip, twist grip assembly installed on the handlebars so that I can adjust the total slack in the system. And at that point, I will check the cable adjustment for the oil pump drive. I'm going to leave the cover off the oil pump. Here is the original cover. It's not in bad condition considering its age. It does have some battle damage to it, you can see there. I have sourced a brand new NOS part. You see the part number right there that I will be installing at a later date. The reason I'm going to leave the cover off is obviously I have to get back in there again anyway. So what I think I'm going to do is just simply take some masking tape and I'm going to seal the cavity up just to keep dust and debris out of there as I work on the rest of the bike. And that'll be easily removable when it comes time to finish up the oil pump cable adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and install the oil fill plug right now. This is the original, it came off the bike. Apparently Yamaha made two different versions of this style, which is no longer available. And I'm going to keep it and preserve it. There's really nothing wrong with it. You can see a little damage there from wear. I did throw it in my tumbler and polish it up. And though when I removed it, there was no O-ring or gasket here, it looks like it's supposed to have one, and logic would dictate that it would. And Yamaha does not call out a separate part number for that O-ring that I've been able to find, so I just went through my O-ring collection and found one that's reasonably close, at least for now. And I'm going to go ahead and install this plug at this point in the case over here, just again to keep dust and debris out while I continue to work on the motorcycle. You will note I'm putting a tag on it that says no oil so that I don't forget to put transmission oil in it. I normally do all my fluids at one time much later in the project, so I'm not going to be putting oil in the bike right now, but this will help prevent running the bike without any transmission oil. At this point I think we're going to move on, and now we're going to replace the front engine mount here, what I call a strut, but it's really, Yamaha calls it an engine mount. That's that chrome piece I got back fairly recently from my re-chrome shop. I think I'm prepared now to go ahead and remove the temporary engine mount strut you can see here I put in some months ago. I've got a jack underneath the engine to support the weight of the engine and just put a little bit of up pressure on that motor to lift it up so that I can loosen the hardware, the bolts, to pull that temporary strut out. I believe the correct wrenches are ready to go, and of course the strut is laying there ready to go in place. So let's get on with getting this temporary strut out of here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to release those two bolts. Those are the actual mounting bolts, by the way, on the bottom. On the top, that bolt is just temporary. That's all thread, if you recall. I cut and to the right size to temporarily locate that top piece because I did not have the right bolt. The bike had actually it's an Imperial carriage bolt, if I recall, originally holding the top of that engine mount in place. I did source a good used part. I could not find an NOS part, believe it or not, for that bolt. Yamaha does not support that anymore. These bottom bolts are 14 millimeter. So let's see if I can't just get these off. Swing that down out of the way. The bolt at the top is a 1/2 inch. Again, remember this is just a temporary. It was never intended to, of course, be a permanent solution. I've been examining this bolt that I bought off of eBay, the top mounting bolt for the engine mount, and this bolt came with 2 washers, a real thin flat washer and a locking washer, split washer. According to the Yamaha parts diagram for this assembly, this thin washer or this flat washer should not exist, and you only use the lock washer. I think what I'm going to do when I do the fit up here, I'm going to first see how much bolt I have protruding through. I'm probably not going to have a lot. You normally don't, excuse me, in this kind of situation. But what I may end up doing, because I don't like the idea of using this locking washer up against the fresh paint there, fresh meaning it's new. It's been 6 or 8 months since or more actually, since I painted the frame, more like a year. I think I might end up using just this flat washer because I don't want to damage the paint there. I typically don't deviate from the manufacturer specifications when I do a restoration, but in this case I think I'm going to. And instead of using the lock washer, I use just flat washer and a little dab of Loctite to prevent this crown nut from backing off. I'm going to begin mounting this bracket by hanging it from the top mount so it hangs vertically, and then I can just swing it up underneath the engine like that. And it should be pretty straightforward. The bolt goes through from the left to the right. And I don't know if you can see there, but there's probably no more than, oh, maybe 1/4 of an inch, 6 millimeters protruding. So now I'm going to take some Loctite, and this is just blue Loctite. This is a removable kind. Put a little dab on there, and put on the flat washer, again, which is not original, and then the crown nut. Now I'm going to swing, I'm not going to tighten it quite yet. Now I'm going to swing this bottom mount up. See how this aligns? Engine's got to go up just a little bit. That. And these bottom bolts go through from the opposite side. So they go through from right to left. And these also have just lock washers on this side. With the nuts. And again, these bottom bolts are original. And they're in actually very good condition. They're all oily, which is very common. I'm going to use thin plastic bags over my hardware. You've seen me do this before. These bottom bolts, by the way, are 14 millimeter. That just prevents me from marring up the hardware. Now I'm not going to completely tighten them. I'm just going to start them snug. Then I'm going to go back and tighten up the top. top's done. And all we need to do is finish snugging up the bottom. And the front engine strut is finished. We're going to finally install the rear shock absorbers on the YL1. As you can see, I have removed the temporary wooden supports that I had used in place of the shocks up to this point. I have the bike up on the center stand because I wanted the rear wheel to be able to freewheel a bit. I do have a little wedge under the wheel, a little piece of wood, so that I can adjust the height of the rear wheel so that I can fine-tune the eye-to-eye center on the shocks when I go to put them together. Excuse me. I have little anti-seize put on both the top studs, and I'll put some anti-seize on the bottom bolts when we get to that point. I also have the shocks themselves and all the parts and the tools laid out and ready to go. We're going to start on the left side. I'm going to install first the shock that I had repaired. If you recall some videos back where I had drilled and tapped and put a set screw in there so I could refill this with oil. I did a video or two on that process. I'm happy to report I have hung the shock like that in that position for, oh boy, it's been several weeks now. Maybe even a month since I worked on the shock, and it has not leaked yet, so I'm going to consider that a success at this point anyway. These shocks are directional, and what I mean by that is the way they are positioned on the bike. As you will notice, there's a stamping here and a hole. Stamping's on one side, the hole goes all the way through, or there's a hole on each side rather, I should say. So the shock will get positioned on the bike like that, and you can see this relief cut here. That relief fits into, or up against rather, the top shock support like that. So you do need to consider these directional. What's a little unique about that is that puts the cylinder at the top rather than the bottom of the shock, which I think is more typical, but nonetheless, that's the way these shocks are mounted on this bike. And you'll also notice I already have the rubber bushings installed on both ends as well as the inserts. This is a very straightforward process in order to mount this. On the top, there's a thicker plate, as you can see here, and that'll go on first. Then a thinner washer. It's like a big washer. I think Yamaha calls it a plate. And then simply you can slip the shock on like that. And then on the bottom you just align the through holes. For the bolt itself, and this is very straightforward. You have, and this is an original bolt by the way that I had replated. This washer by the way is original as well. I'm going to put a little anti-seize on that. And that bolt gets threaded through from the inside out. The inside of the swing arm right here is also threaded, so that bolt will thread right in. And get it aligned here. Once that bolt comes through, another washer or plate, as Yamaha calls them, will go on the outside and secure that bolt. You'll also notice this is the crown nuts that I had drilled and retapped here a few videos back also to cap off these fasteners. Put the top one on. And I'm going to leave those just loose for now and go around to the other side and repeat the process. And we have the shocks complete. It's been quite a journey getting here between rebuilding the shocks that I did in some previous videos, reworking the crown nuts, but they're complete. I think they look very good, actually. I'm quite pleased with the way they turned out. And that was another bit of a milestone for this bike. So at this point, I think we've got this video about done. Put a ramp on this. We're probably now going to move on to the handlebars and the handlebar controls. I'll come back to the chain and the chain guard a bit later, but I think I'm going to do the handlebars and their controls next, along with the speedometer and the other controls up front. So again, that's going to be it for this video today, folks. Any questions, thoughts, issues, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.